All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, basically our channel is about DIY stuff and making things and building things. So today we do have a new project. I had a lot of people asking about the Viper and wanting me to do things with the Viper, so we've decided to start a project on the Viper. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a kind of a bigger project, and it is a DIY supercharger kit install. So I did a little bit of research. I looked at Row Racing. They didn't have any kits ready to go. Paxton, I wasn't real wowed by the product, nothing against Paxton, but it was kind of pricey for what you're getting and only getting powered at like the mid 600 horsepower-ish range. I didn't feel it was that great of a performance add-on for $10,000, $11,000. So what we decided to do is go ahead and piece parts together to make not only a better kit than that Paxton, but more horsepower and at a much cheaper cost. So I wasn't going to snake you. I went ahead and ordered a bunch of the parts already. I didn't want to have a video where it just says, hey, this is what we're going to do. So let me introduce you to the parts that we bought already. From here, you'll see obviously the air filter and what we call the CNC, or is basically the intercooler. We have the main compressor unit, which is the Paxton Novi 2000, which is also the featured unit inside the Paxton kit. A couple different fittings for the intercooler that we'll need. We won't probably need them all, but I bought extra just to be safe. Obviously the belts for the supercharger. This is the water tank that will cool the CAC, or the intercooler unit, and the pump that pumps the water through. The bypass valve that we'll need, the fuel pump, and we are still waiting on our pulley, our mounting kit for the main unit itself, and the heat exchanger, which is basically like the intercooler that runs the intercooler, and the injectors. The injectors will be here today. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with the fuel pump, and the fuel pump is not an easy job. So just to give you an idea of what it takes to get the fuel pump out of this car, to change that fuel pump, basically you have to take the whole back wall out of the trunk. It's kind of ridiculous, but this is Dodge's design. You'll see that there, even I know it's kind of hard to see right now, there's rivets all the way around. I have to drill all those out, get the silicone off, pull that whole panel off, and unmount the fuel tank and pull it through the trunk. So kind of ridiculous, but that's what has to happen to get it done today, so that's what we're going to do. The reason I chose to do that project first, Paxton was using a dual inline pump, which I really didn't like. And one of the things about the Paxton unit is it's kind of made as a put-on, take-off type unit, is what it seems like, at least a package. I want ours to be more of a permanent package. And I think an intake pump, if you can do it, is the best way to go. So it's the cleanest way to go. And also, I can start the vehicle after that to make sure that everything's kosher and everything's running correctly. And a little bit of research that I have done, from what I've learned at least, the fuel regulator on this thing, as long as it's working and isn't having problems, which mine is not having problems, will take pretty much any kind of pressure and put whatever injector power it needs to it, and anything that's left over, it's going to dump back in the tank. So hopefully that's the truth in what I've researched. But the idea behind that is to go ahead and get the tank pulled out, replace the pump, and then get it started to make sure that there's no issues there. And next step to that will be replacing the injectors, which obviously it's going to run extra rich. This engine already has cams and lifters in it for a supercharger, so it's already built. And the Gen 2 in this model actually has forged internals, so I think it's good up to like 1,000 or 1,100 horsepower. We're going to be shooting for the 7s probably. I don't really want to push it that high because I want it to be drivable, which it hardly even is stock. And I want reliability. Pushing 1,000 horsepower out of it, I feel like I'll be fixing it all the time. I don't want that. So I want something that we can just jump in, go, and play with. And I'm sure you guys kind of feel the same way. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start taking out this fuel pump. All right, guys. So hopefully you can see a little bit better now what it is that I'm working with. Here we are inside the trunk. About to take out the rivets. You can kind of see them a little bit better now. I was actually hoping that it was the kind that you can pop out and pull through. And they're not. I'm gonna have to drill them, so obviously, as you can see, we got to drill for that. I won't keep it for all basically all that drilling. There's probably 18 to 20 of them all the way around this thing. I'm gonna drill them all out, and hopefully there's not a whole lot of silicone holding it in. I was told that there was, so there probably is. We're gonna find out. Hopefully that gets off somewhat easily, or comes out somewhat easily, and we can kind of determine what's behind it and how easily we can get to this tank. So let's go ahead and do that and see where we're at afterwards. Alright guys, so we got it all drilled out. That was a whole lot of fun, especially the ones all the way up in the top where you have no room to get to. But basically what I'm doing now, taking basically an interior clip remover, hammering it behind it and prying it out is how I'm getting them out. So that's kind of the way I'm doing it. There's different ways I'm sure you can do it. You can probably use an extractor to get them out or whatever. This happens to be working for me. Just kind of FYI, another idea. Let me go ahead and get the rest of these out and pull this thing out. All right, so all the rivets are out, and just like I suspected, it's either silicone in or panel bonded in. I think it's silicone. When I get behind the unit itself, I can hear it kind of, not crackle like it's cracking fiberglass, but kind of pulling the silicone away from it. So it looks like I'm going to have to go around this whole thing, this whole perimeter, and try to pry this thing back without trying to crack the fiberglass, because fiberglass isn't fun to repair. On a positive note, you are going to have some scarring when you get some of these things out. An alternative method would use a bigger drill bit, but then you're going to need a bigger rivet to put into it when you put it back. So keep that in mind. But however, all the little stuff like you see right here, don't worry about the little stuff. You can sand that down. All this is bedliner straight in there. You can go to Lowe's or Advanced Auto Parts and buy yourself a spray can to touch all this up anyway. So not a big deal. Let me see if I can get this thing off and get back with you. All right, so you guys are gonna laugh. I finally bought a tripod so you guys can see some of the actual work when I'm doing it. So rather than just ripping this thing out, I figured I might as well show you. So all I'm gonna do, I pried up this corner here with a pry bar, some screwdrivers, and now I'm gonna get my hand in behind it and slowly pull this thing away. So obviously I don't want to crack the fiberglass, but I want to be able to get the silicone pried off it. And you can kind of hear as it comes. You just got to be slow and careful. It sounds like fiberglass cracking, which is probably part of it. Most of it's that silicone pulling away from the body itself. So basically you're going to start from one side and work your way to the other. I can tell there's a lot right here. It's really got me some resistance, so I may have to shove something inside there. I'm going to try to get the whole bottom loose, and then I'll work on the top, but you can kind of see how I'm doing it here as an FYI. So give me a second, let's get this whole thing off. All right, now, I don't know how well this is going to work with you guys being right there in the camera. It's kind of a tight space, but I'm going to try to pull this thing out. I want to get you guys to be able to actually see what this looks like. So I've got it all loose on the bottoms. I told you that's what I wanted to do first. And now I need to pry it from the tops. Again, making sure not to crack fiberglass, which is, it's hard to determine the difference between the sound of the silicone and fiber, but you got to make sure you do. And there it is. Let's get this thing out of here. All right, well, there's our tank. Let me pick you up here. Well, you can see our fuel pump. So I did notice, per the drawings, there's some bolts in the side of it way back there. One on each side. I think that's got to come out back there. And obviously these tubes. Now this thing has got about a quarter tank in it. I wasn't planning on obviously doing this project until it happened. It was kind of in storage for the winter. So next step forward, I guess, is we are going to unbolt the thing, get the tubes pulled off, and see if we can pull this thing back into the trunk. So let's get on it. All right, the bolt that's back there, hold on to it, is a half-inch bolt. Pretty simple to get out. I just used a ratcheting wrench, and then I used one of the amazing tools that I call the cordless ratchet. So we got that bolt out. I loosened up the clamp here and the clamp here. FYI, I don't know about yours, my clamp was facing downward and was a pain in the butt to get to. So when we put that back, we'll put it so it's adjustable and we can get to it. So next point, pull off the fuel cap. There's 3 screws here, and I'm going to try to go ahead and push this down and out of the way to see if I can get it out of the way to get that clearance. Because the tube there, the connecting tube, is kind of tight and it's pretty stiff. So if I can get that out of the way, it's going to help us a lot. So let me try to get that out. All right, so here's where we're at. As I shared with you, I've got the bolt out. I loosened the gas filler hose tube, whatever you want to call it. And then I had to go ahead and loosen the other side of the strap, and I was able to pull it up and around in what I think is out of the way. Now, if you look, something we're dealing with is clearance here. So as far as clearance goes, I don't think there's enough room for this tank to quite clear this fiberglass. But if you look at it, you can see where the old paint line was. The actual trim piece comes way up here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut about 1 inch off this right here where you kind of see the silicone stuck. There, and then over here. It should give us somewhat of clearance. My only concern after that will be clearing the fuel pump itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim that back, and then we're gonna kind of see how much clearance we have there. We'll go from there. All right, next point of business is gonna be detaching the vent hose, which is right here. And you're gonna see there's two blue connectors, or two blue pieces that go inside of this. You're gonna wanna naturally push these in, but that's not the right way. You actually gotta get behind them if you don't have the special tool, and just pry it outward and then pull it right back on, and it'll come right off, and you'll see that's what it looks like basically right there. So make sure you got a rag, because there's gonna be some pressure built up. It's gonna pump out of the top of that tank there to absorb everything. Now, there's not a whole lot online that shows you how to do this. I found one write-up that a guy says something about removing inside part of the fender in this back passenger side. I don't know if we're gonna get there yet or not. I'd like to be able to drain the tank, but it's got some kind of stopper when you try to stick a tube in it, so you can't drain it. So others haven't had that problem, but I do for whatever reason, so hooray to me. Anyhow, there's only about a quarter tank. It should be manageable. I was just trying to prevent it when I tip it backward to get out of here so it doesn't pour out of there. So we'll just work with what we got. I may have to do some more trimming to get this thing out. I got the strap off like we spoke about. I do have to detach that vent hose right there, or the vent tube right there. And there's an electrical plug, which is going to be tough to see with this in here, which is right, if you can see it. It's hard to see, but it's kind of back there, right behind that connection there. That's got to kind of unplug. So we're going to try to wiggle it out the best we can. If we can't, I may have to take these fenders up, but let me try to get to that and see where I get. All right, as expected, I did have to cut out a little bit more, as you'll see. Cut out to the edge of the black there. Sorry, I got a mask on trying to avoid this gas. I am going to have to drain this gas somehow. You can see it's starting to leak out. It's definitely more than quarter tank. Obviously, these Vipers are sometimes notorious for not telling the right gas levels. So, I can, technically speaking, pull it out. It's wiggled out quite a bit, as you can probably see. I could get it to come farther, but what's going to happen is the front end, or the back end, is going to dip down, and that's going to start leaking. So I'm going to see if I can somehow, or even if I can get it down at an angle and then start pumping it out, but I'm going to try to get some of this gas out so I'm not choking on it, because it's not good to breathe in after a while. So let me do that. I'm going to try to get this tank out finally, and then we can start talking about replacement of the pump. All right, so quick update. I decided rather than draining the tank, I couldn't, because they have some kind of anti-siphoning thing in the bottom of the tank. I don't know why other people haven't ran into this problem, but it won't let me get a tube down into it to drain it. So I thought the smart idea would be, since it measures about 1.5 inches, go grab a drain plug at the local hardware store that would measure 1.5 inches. That would make sense, right? No. Just like anything in a hardware store for homes, nothing's measured like they're supposed to be. That is not 1.5 inches, it's like 2 inches. So I did the next best thing, since I've already made 2 trips to the hardware store for nothing. A thick rubber glove with 2 zip ties, and I don't know if this is going to work or not. We're about to find out right now. Seems to be holding it, so I think we might be okay. Right now, again, I'm gonna pull this thing out. I'm gonna try to take that fuel tank out. One of these days I'll get it out, and we'll take a look at it. All right, I pulled the tank out. It's not completely out, but it's almost out. I just wanted to show you real quick. We do have to disconnect the power to the fuel pump, as well as a vacuum line behind it here. Is really easy. As far as the fuel pump, this little red notch has to get pulled outward, and then there's a clip you'll push down. This thing will slide right off, and then obviously that pops right off. As far as the vent tube, I think there's enough room in this, yeah, that we don't have to pull that thing off. So let me go ahead and take those off real quick. All right, guys, so it finally happened. I pulled it out. The clip was a little tricky. I told you it was the, I can find wherever it went. Fell back here somewhere else, kind of hidden back there. The little red clip was more of a pain than I thought. Well, you do have to pull this thing out. I had to take the vacuum hose off and push it from behind to get it out. So anyways, it's off. Now where we're at is we're gonna have to spin this thing off and lift that pump out of there, and then we're gonna have to transfer the new pump into the old unit. So let's go ahead and work on that. All right, guys, so it's off. After you pull it out, go ahead and set something over top of it so nothing falls in that tank. Before I pulled it, I went ahead and cleaned around the edges the best I could and sprayed it off so nothing would get down in the tank. But here's the pump unit itself here. A bit of a pain to get the retainer ring off. You can buy a special tool for this or rent it sometimes at AutoZone. I went ahead and just took a big flathead screwdriver and lightly tapped counterclockwise just to get it loose. Then I took basically a plumbing I don't know what kind of wrench they call it, strap here, and just kind of loosen it up as best I could. So again, here's the pump here. You can kind of see the internals there. The pump that we need to get to is actually down in there. So I'm gonna have to remove and basically disassemble this unit here to get the new one in. So let me go ahead and start getting some of this apart here, and I'll kind of show you how I did that. All right, update so far. So you're gonna have to separate it in half. You're gonna have a clip, an electrical clip that clips right into that black connector there. You'll have to unplug. Then I went ahead and cut the fuel hose that goes up to the exit nozzle up there. And then you'll have 3 little tabs here that'll pop out, and this whole top will come right off. So you're good there. This popped off the bottom, and obviously I turned the this piece here to slide this off. It wasn't necessary, but I did. So then you're left with this here. What you'll have to do here, it's kind of tricky. This piece sits down inside here, and this piece here has a flange inside it. So what I had to do to pry it out, I basically got my screwdriver in between it and right here and just popped it out. It popped right off, and I just lifted the thing out though. So here's our fuel pump here, as you can probably see. It is smaller than the new one. There's different fittings too. So I have to do some research real quick to see if I see anything online stating if I have to cut the bottom out. Sometimes when you do systems like this, you have to cut the base of it out, where the new pump pre-filter will just kind of sit at the bottom of it there. That may be what needs to happen, but I'm gonna do some research real quick. Let me get back with you. All right, so the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to test, I guess, polarity of the wiring. I did read online somewhere that the wires are reversed and you'd have to switch them, which turns out to be true. The reason why is I went ahead and hooked this up, and you'll see that the wires were opposite. The reds and blacks were opposite, even though I have the black taken out. So I went ahead and hooked it up to the pump that way, and it sucked in. It didn't push out, so I knew that they were reversed. So what I went ahead and did, you're going to take your harness right here. It's going to be kind of hard to see here. And you want to go ahead and you want to stick a screwdriver down just above, it's hard to see there, just above that that spade connector there. Pull up, and the back of it'll pull right out. And then all you're going to do is going to swap the black and the red on there. And then test again to make sure that it pumps, and mine did. So far that's our first step. Alright, so here's the update on what we ended up doing. Because there's no real way to mount this pump like the original's just too small, just doesn't fit the same. The only instructions I found online were a dual pump setup, and this is basically the way they did it. So obviously this is a single setup, but what we did is took a Dremel cutoff tool and cut 2 slits right here, and then cut out the whole bottom, cap, which is basically this right here. We went ahead and cut that off. Initially I was going to use the original filter stock and then put this one inside, and then I realized if I did that it would sit too hot. It wouldn't pull from the lowest part of the tank, so I'd be missing fuel. So I had no choice, so I went ahead and cut the bottom out and made sure that the stock fit about as low as the tank's going to get. We don't want it right on the ground, but these basically touch the bottom for the most part of the tank, so we got it just above the bottom. And then we went ahead and used a stainless steel clamp to clamp it inside there as everything runs out. One thing you'll notice, the clamp is from the inside, which would be a pain to get to, and the reason why is it won't fit down the hole of the gas tank if I was to put it on the outside. So what I had to do is put a little viewing hole to get the screwdriver inside there to actually tighten the clamp itself. So that's where we're at. Now I'm about to assemble the top end. You can see that I reversed the wires. You'll see positive, positive, negative, negative. So that's good. Now I tested it. Everything's good on that. I just got to get the top half put together, and I will post you up in a second. Alright guys, so it's all together now. Quick tip. So I ran the wire up through. I ended up having to cut off one of the little arms or bridges inside here, these plastic pieces, for it to come up through over here. You can see it right there where it's kind of cut off. To get it clear, I went ahead and plugged in the electric connector up there. And then next step, I temporarily put the clamp on so I didn't have to fish it from down there, just kind of lightly tight right here. And so you're aware, the pump is bigger. The hose size is bigger, and the original the hose size here that went up to it was smaller, and we cut it off so it was still on here. I cut the clamp off, but I went ahead and left this piece nice and tight and snug on it because it's what got it, this hose right here, tight and fitted on. So make sure when you do cut this off of this upper piece right here that you leave that 1/2 inch, so when you slide this over top of it, you got a nice tight fit and it's not sliding off on you. So anyways, that's it, all installed and ready to go. We're about to drop it back in the tank. Once it's in the tank and it's connected, I'm not going to push it back in yet. I'm going to fire the car up to make sure the car starts before we shove everything back in. So hold tight, you'll check that out here shortly. Alright, here we are guys. I just set it back down in the tank. You're going to want to make sure that you remember to put your rubber basically sleeve around this and it fits tight in. I wouldn't put this thing on there just yet until you're ready to get this thing down and tightened down in, like you'll see me doing right now. You might have to take a flathead screwdriver and wedge the edges down. You don't want it to peel up. You want to sit this thing nice and smooth and tight in that tank. See, like it's peeling up right here. We don't want that. We want to make sure it's all down in the tank. It's a nice tight seal. So we're going to go all the way around it. Make sure she's fitted. Double checking with the flathead screwdriver that we got it all in. It might be a little bit tougher around the backs for you to see. Like I said, you want to make sure it's all in there and it's pushed all the way down. So it's going to give us that nice tight fit that we really need. A couple more spots here. Looks like it should be pretty close. Even turn it a little bit to make sure you didn't miss anything. See a little tiny spot there. And there we are. We're ready to put this thing back on. Now you want to angle it again so that it's basically set up to exactly the same position as it was before. Like so. Slide this around just like that. We're going to tighten this down. You still see me doing here. You can get it hand tight, then you're going to need to get your tool like we took it off with to get it nice and snug. Once you do that, spin this back out just like it was. Like I said, we're going to get our connections hooked up real quick. We're going to fire up and test it out. Alright, so my rubber sock idea didn't exactly hold up the greatest. It's kind of starting to come out. As you see a bunch of rags hooking it up. But we're going to go ahead and turn it on, see if it primes without leaking. Don't know if that primed or not. Let's try to fire it up and see what it does. I'm not sure if that plug came disconnected or not. Assuming that it's working and it's not just fuel left in the fuel rail, we're doing okay so far. Again, you'll see I have no intake on it simply because I was test fitting some of the tubing. Say it's working. So now we have to work on getting everything buttoned back up and that thing stuffed back in. Alright guys, the tank's back in. Make sure that you do hook up obviously your fuel line, your vacuum line, and your breather line before you push it back in. And what I had to do, it was a really tight fit where I cut that lip, and you got to be careful because the electrical connector was trying to catch that, so I had to kind of put a pry bar in lightly, very lightly on top of this and just kind of give it a little bit of finesse to push down on it to get it to slide through and it popped right in. Now the only thing I got left to do is connect the filler cap, which has been my headache so far. So hopefully that'll be done. I'll get everything strapped back in and then we'll talk about how we're going to clean up all these outer edges and get everything resealed up and put back together. Alright, the tank is bolted back in. All I'm going to say about that is have fun with that strap. If you bend it at all in any way, it does not want to stretch, so it's not fun. But I got it back in. Anyhow, right now I'm, like I told you, I was going to clean up all the edges around here. I'm using a drill with a wire wheel, and as you can see, it does a pretty good job of cleaning that off, if you can see that. Anyhow, I'm going to go around the whole edge and do that. What I'm going to be doing to reinstall this, rather than using the rivets that are like $8 a piece from Dodge, and never being able to get to the tank again without drilling them out, I'm going to use the plastic pop rivets that you use for like interiors, and I'm still going to use the black bead of silicone all the way around this thing, just to kind of seal it up. So that's what we're going to do now. I will give you a second to look at the tank to see what you can see as far as up and around it, and then we'll get back with you when it's all done. Alright guys, so again we are going to be sealing and riveting in the rear panel for the gas tank. You can see I just sprayed it out. It was getting kind of dirty in there and I'll never be able to get to it unless I take this back out, so I went ahead and sprayed it off. But what we're going to be using again are these right here. It's a 1/4 inch basically nylon rivet that basically you pop in and then push the top in. There is the sealant we'll be using here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to dry off the edges. I'm going to run the sealant all the way around it, press to fit the cover, then put one of the rivets in the center to hold it, and we're going to work from the inside out. So let's go ahead and move forward. Alright, well there you go guys. There it is sealed. I even put an extra one down the bottom to get extra rigidity. And you'll notice too, I don't know if yours is like this, but Dodge did a half-assed job of painting around the edges. There's a lot of dirt spots, so I'm going to go ahead and use some textured bedliner spray. Just on some of these spots, even though it's probably not going to match, it'll look better than the basically white spots and non-painted areas. So I'm just going to go ahead and touch that up. But that's it for this section. Let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, well that is a wrap for the fuel pump video, guys. I appreciate you watching. Stop back and check out our fuel injection video. There will be a 2-part series. There'll be 2 different types. We'll have a drop-in replacement injector as well as the DECA injector with a different fuel rail system, so you guys can make a choice as to which one you want to do. In any case, I appreciate you watching. Please drop a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.